Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome. In our last lecture, we have discussed how social welfare are generated through market participation by both consumers and producers, right. And to measure that welfare, what is generated through market participation and market transactions, okay, that we termed as surplus. The consumers as a group, what they are generating amount of welfare, that we term as consumer surplus, and similarly for the producers it is a producer surplus. Producers as a group, what they are generating, okay. And that surplus, as we clarified, that is basically the extra valuation that each of these party is generating. To be specific, consumer surplus is basically a consumer whatever valuation of the commodity or of the service to that consumer has, and what actually he or she is paying to the market when he is purchasing that commodity from the market, right, means the price. So, the gap, or more specifically the positive gap between the market price what consumer is paying and consumers maximum willingness to pay, that we are telling consumers valuation of that product, right. So, that gap is basically the consumer surplus, and exactly the same way the amount of market price what producers are getting by selling their product, but what is the actual cost to the producer to be able to deliver that product to the market, right. So, that positive gap, that is called producer surplus, and since consumer and producer both are a part of our economy in the same society they are coming from. So, sum of this consumer surplus and producer surplus, that we told that total social surplus, and this surplus is nothing but some quantitative measure or some monetary valuation of the social welfare that is generated by the market transaction, by the participation of these two group of economic agents through the market transaction, right. So, we will actually start another new chapter today, chapter number 8. Before that let us just, as we claim earlier, that always consumers will be happy if they have to pay little bit less, and exactly the other side, producer will be always happy or happier if they get little bit more price for a commodity what producers are selling and what consumers are buying, right. So, and when we are telling that consumers will be happy or producers will be happy like that, right. So, can that happy what we are telling be captured in this social surplus, whether their social or their corresponding surplus, okay, is increasing or not? Let us try to understand that first, and then we will start the new chapter, chapter number 8 in fact we will start today, okay. So, suppose as usual, suppose we are measuring say quantity demanded in the horizontal axis and price in the vertical axis, and suppose this is the demand curve, okay. So, suppose this is the price, okay, say O P star is the price level, okay. Of course, you can ask yourself how that O P star price level comes into the picture, perhaps the supply curve pass through this way, right. So, we are not bringing that supply curve into the picture. So, let us discuss what we are trying to convey here, okay. Suppose this is the equilibrium price, right. Now, as we know, as we demonstrated in the last lecture, that this amount, this triangular kind of amount area will be representing the consumers surplus, consumers as a group, consumers as a group, their surplus, okay, or amount of surplus generated by all the consumers who are participating in the market at this price level, O P star price level per unit of that commodity, right. Now suppose somehow if price level falls, okay, say suppose price falls to OP1 star, okay. So what will happen? Look, then if this is the case, consumer surplus will increase to this. Earlier surplus was this bounded by green color bounded triangular kind of area. Now surplus is this red colored triangular kind of area, okay. So it basically this mass, this blue color shaded area is actually amount of consumer surplus increased, okay. So what we are telling that when consumers are or consumers have to pay little bit less price, they will always happy. This is some sort of reflection of that happiness in the amount of surplus they are getting or they are generating, consumers as a group, right. Now let us try to understand the amount of surplus what is generated or extra amount of surplus what is generated due to this fall in price from P star to P1 star, okay. This extra valuation what is generated or extra consumer surplus what is generated, that is basically this green area, trapezoid kind of area, right. We can break that trapezoid area into two parts, say maybe C, D and E. So extra or increment in consumer surplus due to price falls from P star to P1 star, okay, increment in consumer surplus is represented by P star, C, E, P1 star, this kind of trapezoid area, that is the increment in consumer surplus, increment in consumer surplus, right. Out of that, this consumer surplus we will break, that must be equals to this rectangular area P star, C, D, P1 star, this rectangular area plus C, D, E, this kind of triangular kind of area. I am telling triangular, it will be perfect triangle provided that this demand curve is a straight line demand curve, right. So it may not be straight line, that is why I am telling triangular kind of, looks like a triangle, okay. So the increment in consumer surplus we can break into two components, one this rectangular kind of area, okay, and another is this triangular kind of area. So you can understand this rectangular area is representing the extra surplus gained by the consumers who were already there in the market. By that what we are referring? We are referring when price was OP star, that time what was the quantity transaction in the market? Definitely that time quantity transaction was OQ star, right. So this much of quantity was transacted or were purchased by the consumers, right, all the consumers who are participating in the market, right. Now earlier those consumers they were consuming until this quantity, right, OQ star quantity, right, and they were generating, suppose this is A point, they were generating AP star C triangular kind of area as the total consumer surplus. Now the extra consumer surplus what this represented by this rectangular area P star, C, D, P1 star, that rectangular area, that is basically that is arising due to additional surplus gained by each of the existing customers. Existing customers means who were already participating before price changes or when price was OP star level. Okay. Those customers, each of them are actually getting this distance P1 star, P star, this distance amount of, or that is the exactly the reduction in the price, right. So that amount per unit of the transaction of that commodity, that amount is gained by or additional surplus, gained as additional surplus by the already existing customers. Okay. Now then what this CDE, this triangular kind of area, that is also additional surplus generated, right. Look, that surplus is generated due to some new customers being able to participate the market now. Okay. When price was O P star level, some potential customers were there who were not able to tolerate that much price. Alternatively, we can tell in other words that much price they can't participate, at that much price they were not able to purchase the product at that much high price, right. When price falls from OP star to OP1 star, then this many customers, so customers who are lying in between Q star and Q1 star, Q1 star, that suppose this is Q1 star. So, Q1 star within this segment, the customers who are there, look at here, these customers were not participating into the market transaction before the price falls, when price was OP star. Okay. So, these customers can enter into the market only when price falls from OP star to OP1 star, right. So, this is the extra valuation or extra surplus generated due to additional participation of the customers in the market transaction, right. So, when price falls, overall consumer surplus is increasing. Okay. We can understand that increment in consumer surplus by breaking that into two parts. One part, each of the earlier existing consumers, they are getting some additional surplus due to fall in price. Okay. Not only that, due to fall in price, some new customers could participate now into market transaction, and due to their participation, they are also generating some additional consumer surplus. As a result, total consumer surplus is increasing. Okay. Exactly the same thing will happen for the producer surplus. Let us go to the next slide. Say we were telling, no, producers will always willing to get little bit more price. Alternatively, we can tell that if price increases, producers will be happy, right. So, their happiness also will be captured by increment in their surplus. Okay. Say exactly the same way we are measuring price in the vertical axis, say quantity supplied in the horizontal axis, and suppose this is the supply curve. Okay. And suppose this was the price level OP star, that was the initial price level, right. So, at that price level, until OQ star amount of commodity is transacted in the market, and each of those unit is transacted at the price OP star, right. And this is the gap between the price what sellers are getting per unit of the commodity vis-a-vis what actually their cost of production reflects. Their cost of production is reflected by the supply curve, right. This say O, not O, say suppose this we are telling that say ASS1 supply curve. Okay. Suppose. So, this was the initial equilibrium point E, and P star E S. This triangular kind of area were representing the producers surplus, producers as a group, producers surplus. Okay. That was represented. Now, suppose if price level somehow increase, say suppose this, say price level is increased to P2 star, right. So, price increases from OP star to OP2 star. Okay. So, what will happen? Definitely producer surplus, new producer surplus will be say E1. So, new producer surplus will be triangular area. This was the old surplus, old. Okay. After the price change, this is the new producer surplus, that is represented by SE1 P2 star, that kind of triangular area, right. So, definitely we can see that increment in producer surplus is represented by this trapezoid kind of area. So, P star, P2 star, E1, E, this kind of trapezoid area, this area is basically the increment in say consumer surplus, we are writing CS, consumers, not consumer surplus, here producer surplus, I am sorry, this is producer surplus. So, PS suppose, so increment in producer surplus, right, this amount. Exactly like the consumer surplus, we can break also this producer surplus into two parts, say suppose this is D. So, this equals to, we can write say P star E D P2 star, this kind of rectangular area, and that is the rectangle, right. That rectangular area is basically the additional producer surplus generated by the producers who were able to participate in the market before the price change at the OP star price level, who were transacting, who were able to sell their product in the market. Each of them are, for each unit of the product, they are getting this additional amount of surplus. So, that is why that total area, this total area is basically the extra surplus gained by the existing producers, existing sellers. Existing, always when we are referring existing in the sense that who were there before the price change, who were participating in the market before the price change, right. And now this plus the triangular area, say EDE1, how we can represent that? That is, look at here, until OQ star amount of commodities were transacted before the price change. After the price change, say suppose transaction amount is increased to OQ2 star. So, this much extra producers now can participate into the market transaction. Means these producers, as we told, those producers are not that much efficient like the producers who were within this segment, right. As we clarified earlier, in the same way, these producers who are within this Q star Q2 star range, the producers who are within the Q star Q2 star range, they are not that much efficient compared to the producers who are lying within the OQ star range, right. Not efficient in which sense? Because their cost of production is little bit more, they are not capable to deliver that product in that cheaper price, right. They need more price, and that is why they consist of this segment of the supply curve, right. This blue color, this segment of the supply curve they consist of, right. And they were not able to tolerate the market price OP star earlier. Now, due to market price increases, they can enter into the market, and as a result they are also able to participate, they are also able to sell their product now, and as a result they are generating this additional triangular kind of area surplus. So, surplus is increasing, producer surplus is increasing due to additional producers participation into the market transaction, and exactly the same way here additional consumer surplus, this triangular area additional consumer surplus is generated due to some additional customers being able to participate into the market transaction. So, in that way we can capture the respective happiness of each of the groups, consumers and producers, how that happiness, when they are we are telling that when price falls consumers will be happy, right. So, how we can capture that additional kind of why they are happy, right, whether that is reflected in the social welfare generated within the society. Yes, that is reflected because their surplus, consumers as a group surplus is increasing. Exactly the other side, producer side, when price is increasing, producers as a group, their surplus also is increasing, right. Now, let us start the chapter, or what is our today's agenda. So, our today's agenda is basically to start another chapter number 8 we are discussing, right. So, it is basically, if you see the title of that chapter, application cost of taxation, application colon cost of taxation. In the earlier chapter 7, where we introduced these consumer concepts of consumer surplus, producer surplus, social welfare and all those, right, there we have discussed how free market operation, Okay. If you allow competitive market to operate freely, customers and producers or market price will be determined by the interaction, okay, by the customers and producer or demand supply interaction, that force on its own and without any intervention by any third party like government or some policy makers, right. We have shown that free market will be able to generate the maximum size of the cake. That cake is the social welfare, we term it as social welfare, okay, total surplus. Okay. Now, we have shown that if some government intervention or some authoritative intervention into that system, right, if the intervention comes through the quantity side, we told no in the last class we have shown that in this side if government intervened by say rationing kind of thing, say government is cutting down the transaction or fixing a limit, beyond that no transaction is allowed into that market, right. Or say suppose this is the demand curve, this is the supply curve, this is the otherwise equilibrium quantity OQ star, right, but government is forcing that no, let us market transaction should be OQ1 star until that OQ1 star amount, right. So, we have shown and that government can force that through say subsidized mechanism that we have discussed in the last class, right. And we have shown that both the cases when government is curtaining through rationing mechanism or government is forcing for the little bit more transaction, more vis-a-vis the equilibrium free market equilibrium transaction amount, right, through perhaps the subsidized mechanism, both the cases actually government is indirectly distorting the market. By distorting the market, what we are referring, actually total amount of welfare generated within this market through this market transaction, which we tell as social surplus, right, total surplus or social surplus, right, that is going to come down in both the cases, this case as well as that case, that we have shown. Today our agenda is when government intervene in this side, price side, okay, whether exactly similar sort of distortion arises or not. Okay. Now, this side government can intervene in two ways, either fixing some upper limit or lower limit like price floor or price ceiling kind of thing, or government can intervene through introduction of some tax, right. So, let us first discuss using another diagram that when government is putting some threshold or some upper bound or lower bound kind of thing, or when government is fixing some price floor or price ceiling kind of thing, no, minimum support price, rent control mechanism, all we have discussed earlier, right. So, suppose and in this case when we are discussing, we are considering only the price floor or price ceiling which are binding kind of nature, which has some implication on the equilibrium. Okay. So, suppose this is the say quantity demanded, quantity supplied we are measuring in the horizontal axis, vertical axis price we are measuring as usual. Suppose this is the demand curve, this is the supply curve, no, this is the supply curve. So, ASS1 is the supply curve, D1 is the suppose demand curve, right. Okay. And suppose this is the price floor, okay, government is fixing. Okay. So, we have discussed earlier that otherwise this could be the equilibrium price level, say OP star could be the equilibrium price level, and at that price level OQ star amount of commodity maybe will be transacted in the market. Now, government is putting some price floor, say minimum support price, okay, like say minimum support price is here OPF star, that amount of price per unit of the transaction, right. So, definitely that is the high price, right. Yes, sellers will be very happy, okay, and they will be willing to supply even more. Earlier at market equilibrium price they were able to supply until this quantity. Now, when price floor is this side, sellers are happy and sellers are willing to supply until this, say maybe OQ1 star amount of quantity, right. But at that price not enough amount of customers are there to purchase their product. Okay. So, how much customers are there at that price, at this price level, how much customers are there who can participate, who can purchase the product at that price? Only this much of customers, right. So, as a result what is happening, if government do not intervene into the market through this kind of price floor, total amount of surplus, or alternatively if government do not intervene and allow this market to operate freely, total amount of surplus could be this red color kind of area, that could be the consumer surplus as a group, and what could be the producer surplus in that case? Definitely this green color triangular kind of area, that could be the producer surplus. So, say maybe this is E point. So, DES, this triangular kind of area could be the total social surplus, right. That was the that is the size of the total amount of welfare generated by the both consumers and producers through their market participation, right. Okay. Now, when government is intervening through this kind of price floor mechanism, right, consumer surplus is cutting down to what, from say D P star E triangular kind of area, that could be the consumer surplus before government intervention, and after government intervention it is reduced to, say suppose this is K point. Okay. So, it is reduced to triangular area D P F star K point, okay, this much. So, consumer surplus is reduced by this yellow kind of shaded area, okay. And producer surplus, what will happen? Look, producer surplus, now each of the producers are getting, who can participate into the market after this increment or introduction of the price floor, right, this kind of binding price floor, right. Each of them are getting this price OPF star, this price, right. So, producer surplus now will be this trapezoid kind of area, this yellow border trapezoid kind of area will be the producer surplus, okay. So, look at here, now the consumer surplus and producer surplus together, what is happening, this triangular area is the consumer surplus and this trapezoid area is the producer surplus. So, total social surplus is becoming this trapezoid kind of area D, suppose this is K1 point, DKK1S, this kind of trapezoid area is the DKK1S, this kind of trapezoid area is the total social surplus. So, definitely KK1E, this much of surplus is lost due to this kind of binding price floor mechanism imposed by the government, okay. Exactly same way we can show, let us show that using a new diagram. Say suppose government is imposing some price ceiling, of course binding kind of nature, say quantity demanded, quantity supplied this side, price that side, this is the say D1 demand curve, okay. S1 supply curve, E is the equilibrium point, otherwise equilibrium point which could be generated in the free market, okay, if market is allowed to operate freely, right. And OQ star, this is the amount of transaction could be transacted in the market, and each unit of the transaction could be transacted at OP star price level. Now, suppose government impose this kind of price ceiling we are telling PC star price ceiling, okay, binding kind of price ceiling. So, that is price ceiling, that is the upper limit of the price, right. So, nobody in this market is allowed to transact that commodity, okay, at any price above the OPC star level, right. Nobody is allowed, that is the legally prohibited price above this level, right. So, what will happen at that price level? Look at, since price level is this OPC star price level is lower than OP star price level. So, consumers are happy. So, earlier this much consumers were there, now this many consumers are there, they are willing to purchase that product at that price, but sellers are not or that many sellers. Earlier this much consumers were participating in the market before the government intervention, this much sellers were also there, they were able to sell their product at that price, at the market equilibrium price. So, after the imposition of this kind of OPC star amount of price ceiling, although OQ1 star amount of customers are there, they are willing to participate in the market at that price level, but only say OQ2 star amount of sellers are there who can tolerate that much lower price. Okay. So, as a result what will happen? Transaction will happen only up to OQ star amount, only up to Q star amount, right. So, this area, so S, E, P star, this triangular area could be the producer surplus in the free market, okay, and triangular area D, E, P star could be the consumer surplus in the free market. So, total surplus, total social surplus could be the triangular area DES, that kind of triangular area could be total social surplus, right. After this kind of binding price ceiling kind of restriction imposed by the government, what is happening? Transaction is cut into OQ2 star, right, and as a result consumer surplus is increasing. Say suppose this is K and this is K2 point. So, suppose this is K prime and that is K2 point, right. So, consumer surplus is becoming now say this green shaded area, this green shaded area, okay. So, consumer surplus is now D, K2, K star, not K star, K prime, D, K2, K prime, PC star. This trapezoid kind of area is the now consumer surplus. And what is the producer surplus? Producer surplus which could be P star ES amount, which could be this amount, that is now reduced to S K prime PC star amount, that triangular kind of area, okay. This is now the producer surplus. So, if you sum up this consumer surplus and producer surplus, total social surplus is basically represented by the trapezoid area D, K2, K prime S, that kind of trapezoid area is the total social surplus. So, obviously again K2, K prime E, this kind of triangular area is the loss of social surplus. So, when we are comparing these two surpluses and when we are telling the loss in the social surplus, that is the loss of the welfare of the society, loss vis-a-vis if say government introduced or imposed some price ceiling or price floor, vis-a-vis if government do not intervene into the market and allow the market to operate freely. If allow the market to operate freely, what could be the social surplus generated? After the government intervention into the market, what is the surplus is generating? And these two surplus if we compare, we are seeing that after the government intervention surplus is always going down. Okay. So, we can tell that through this kind of imposition of binding kind of price ceiling or price floor, government is actually distorting the market. By that kind of intervention, although the intention in the government's mind or policymakers mind is to give a section of the party some relief, right, either customers or producers depending on which, whether it is price ceiling or price floor, a section the government is trying to give some relief, right, but actually through that mechanism government is distorting the market and total social amount or social welfare amount is going to reduce through this kind of intervention. Okay. Let us stop here. In our next lecture we will discuss exactly the same way government intervention is the price dimension, but through imposition of the tax what would happen.